Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3Stickity Stacks in this thing, baby, representing TKOG. And today I'm going to be coming at you guys with an update for my FLOOWANDEREEZE deck profile. So I really, like I said in the last one, I've really been having a blast with this deck. I think it's very, very fun. I know a lot of people hate it, but there's just something about it that I really liked a lot. I always enjoy playing decks that just can give such good follow-up that you naturally don't really have to worry too much about your next turn. You don't have to think too much about your next turn. You don't really have to allocate additional resources or play more conservatively so that you can have follow-up. This is a deck that in general, just by the nature of it playing, you just generate follow-up in the process of building your board, which Shaddolls is one of the decks, and Dragon Maid's another one of the decks that naturally do that. And there's not very many archetypes that can just do stuff like that consistently. So that was the main thing that appealed to me. I was like, dang, this deck can grind forever. I really love decks like that. And it's very, very fun. It's very interesting, just the concept of how the deck works. It's insane. Like, I love the chain blocking aspect and just being able to deny certain hand shots from ever being able to be activated. Again, it just gives me the Shaddol vibes very, very much so. This is an update from my last list. A lot of things have changed. I went undefeated with this list as well. I actually just came back from locals. I lost every dice roll today and won every single match. I 2-0'd three of my matches actually won 2-0. The other ones, it was just 2-1. So the list is actually way more gas than even the one before. It actually just overperformed. Like, this deck just felt so insane today. There's like a lot of Despia running around. You know, there's just like a lot of Brave dot engine, Brave DP, Scythe dot decks, and it's just like my locals is FLOOWANDEREEZE, those engine decks, Prank Hits, and Despia now. It's just insane, and I was just destroying everybody today. So before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you are subscribed, leave a like at the video. Leave a dislike if you don't like the video. Make sure that if you want to become a member of my Discord, use the link down below in the description box to join up. And if you want to support this channel and take a step further, you can also join my Patreon, which I highly recommend. There's some really, really good benefits that you can only get by being a Patreon. That includes access to my side decks and my thought process behind why I side what I side and how I side, because I do use a little bit of mind games post-siding in games 2 and 3. I really like psyching my opponent out into making them side incorrectly because of what they expected for me to do. So I sometimes do the exact opposite. Sometimes I don't, you know, it just depends. But all those things are just information and nuggets that you can actually chomp down on if you are Patreon exclusive. So let's go ahead and get into the list, you guys. So like I said, I went undefeated today. I played nothing but meta all day. The last round that I ended up playing was actually the only Despia deck that I played today, but I expected so much more Despia. This deck actually just destroys so many of the meta matchups that are currently out right now. People think like Lancia just slaughters this deck. I played through Lancia like 3 times today without even stopping it. I just kept pushing it. It was just insane. Like, this deck is very, very powerful. I like it a lot. It supplements for its weaknesses extremely well. Like, it has a lot of counterplay to specific blowout cards that normally would stop it. Like, it has counterplays to Droll and Lancia. Just by the nature of how you play and how you build the deck, I'm gonna get into the list, and you guys are gonna see my other ways of playing around those. But things like, I'm gonna mention this again like I did in the last profile, things like Dimensional Shifter. Just that card alone cuts off Droll, it cuts off Ghost Ogre, and it cuts off it cuts off Veiler. And then you can chain block Ash and Gamma with the cards like your map and just having your access to your cards in your bench. So there's times where I'll even Advent, pay cost, my opponent will Ash, and then I'll be able to chain block a Gamma because I already had a Rabina, and I'll just banish Eaglin, summon Rabina, chain block it. It's just insane. So you can actually play around Veiler, Ogre, and also Droll with Shifter. Something else that's really cool with Shifter that I feel like people don't touch up on much is, like, even though Lancia can hurt you, if you open Shifter, it's kind of a similar circumstance that you're putting your opponent under, being that you can still play under Lancia, but people sometimes can't play under Shifter at all. So even if they Lancia you, you can opt to just not play and just Shifter them, and you will get your next turn, and you'll be able to play your engine the normal way it should be played. Or you can just commit and play into the Lancia, because Lancia always takes precedence over Shifter, but the thing is, Shifter will kick in on your opponent's turn and they would not be able to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is insane. The other thing is, like I said, Advent kind of just plays around all these targeting effects. If they don't send spells, it plays around droplets, plays around chalice. infinite impermanence. It's just absolutely insane. Like I said, you can always chain block to dodge Ash and Gamma. So when you break it down, every hand trap that works against this deck, being Imperm, Veiler, Ogre, Ash, Gamma, Nibiru doesn't work. Droll and Lancia can all be played around. Droll and Lancia specifically, well, Droll more specifically is the card that hurts the most, but I actually fine-tuned my list and started playing cross-out designators, so I cover all grounds with my deck. Now there's nothing that can beat me going first if I open optimally. I literally just win. Unfortunately today, I lost every single dice roll. I only got to go first one time, but I won every matchup. It was just insane. So I know that sounds like a lot of rambling, but I feel like it's necessary to touch on, because if you guys were here for a deck list, you wouldn't need a profile. I could just screenshot a deck list and show you, and that'd be it. So for my starters, I played 4 copies of Map. I just think Map is one of the best cards in the deck. The card just has so much utility and allows you to kind of just circumvent so many different scenarios where, like, you would literally be losing to certain cards, and like this card just plays around so much. A lot of people like to hit Eaglin. You can actually banish your Impin off of this to play around people stopping Impin, and use your normal summon for turn to summon Impin. It's just insane what you can do. Like, the level of utility that this card has is insane. When I don't have the combo where I can resolve Impin twice but my hand's optimal, sometimes I will just banish either the trap or I'll banish Unexplored Winds, and I'll grab the other one with Impin. So I have my full setup with Map. I'll have Unexplored Winds and I'll have Dreaming Town, and that's just like, you just body every deck. It's just insane. Like, if this deck can play, just put it this way, like, if Rabina resolves, there's like a 75% chance that you literally just win the duel, because your opponent has to draw specific blowout cards that normally you can be playing around. If you full combo with Shifter, you automatically win the duel. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The only decks that you won't auto win against are going to be the Mirror Match and possibly True Draco. Even Eldritch can't play under Barrier Statue more than often than not. Like, they have to force you to play into like their Torrential. Basically, it's like the only way they really out Barrier Statue. It's insane. But anyways, like I said, Map just plays around so much and it has so much utility. And like, if I start with Advent, this gets more insane, like when you start with Advent to get to your map, because like some people are really, really smart, and I think it's correct to hold your Ash, to not Ash Prosperity or Extra Advent, to not Ash this card. I think it's absolutely correct a lot of the times to hold your Ash for Eaglin. You know, sometimes it's good to Ash this, but you gotta really see what they banish for cost. Like, when I activate Advent, sometimes I'll even psych my opponent. Well, I'll activate this and banish Rabina, and they'll be like, wow, his hand's insane. I'm not ashing that. Because, like, if you banish Rabina, it looks like you can just play no matter what. But sometimes it's like, I might be able to, I might not. I might lose to, like, 2 low-impact hand traps when I play that way, but, like, I do it on purpose to psych my opponent out. But if you start by banishing with this and then get to map, you can chain block Rabina and you can chain block Eaglin. Which is really, really strong. And if you're trying to play around Imperm or Veiler on Eaglin when you're chain blocking it, you can always just banish the Impin instead. And what I often like to do is I start with Eaglin instead of Rabina, because I value Eaglin more than Rabina. So I will use Eaglin and then banish the Rabina instead of going for searching Rabina and then banishing Eaglin. A lot of people do Rabina first. I like to start with Eaglin if I have map, because as soon as I chain block that, it doesn't matter if my opponent stops my Rabina, because I can just use my normal summon for turn to summon the Impin, and I can just keep going that way. Get my extra normal off Impin extended to my full board setup. So there's like a lot of cool tricks that you'll pick up playing this deck longer. I've been getting really, really good. I've never dropped a mirror match. I want to say I've almost bodied every mirror match. Some of them are good games, while others it just blew them out. Just the technical play when it comes to the mirror match can get really, really tricky, and like, you definitely have to be an above average player and just know what you're doing. As far as how the deck functions, that's totally fine, but like, knowing what tech cards that your opponent's on really can help, but that's neither here nor there. The final thing that I want to say as like a tip is, like, I always leave at least 1 bird in my banish zone. I see people get greedy and add all of their birds back from banish zone. So unless you're trying to draw 2 off of Unexplored Winds, which is still greedy, I feel that you should always leave 1 to 2 birds banished, so that you can also chain block Ash on your opponent's turn. Like, I always add back Eaglin. I leave Rabina, and then I'll go Eaglin off of my my Dreaming Towns, and I'll chain block it. So if they like chalice it, then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can still add Rabina and like do another play. But like, always making sure that you have a few birds banished. Make sure that you can constantly chain block your Rabina and your Eaglin. So there will be times that your opponent will be holding an Ash for 2 to 3 turns, and they still haven't got to Ash what they wanted to Ash. And that's when you play this deck like that, that's when it just feels unstoppable. But for more starters, I'm playing 3 copies of Prosperity. I'm also on 3 Extrav now. Like I said, I changed my list a lot. So I'm actually on Extrav. The problem with this deck, the biggest problem for me is not hand traps, it's not other decks, is that it can just lose to itself. Even though you have all these nice starters, for some reason this deck can be really, really funky where like you will only draw one of the kind of cards that you need. Like you'll be fishing through RNG just using pots to try and dig, and you still might not hit the right cards. And so I just feel like I need to play more consistency deck dinners to make sure that I just don't brick. Because a brick to me is like if I draw only Rabina, that's a brick because I know I fold to one hand trap. If I draw like Rabina map, that's not a brick. If I draw like a starter plus Advent, it's not a brick. But I feel like you need 2 engine pieces to make optimal plays in my opinion. If you're just starting with like map revealing Stree and you have a card to banish, for example, like I feel like you're still gonna fold to like just one hand trap. And I don't like that. So that's why I really, really like playing 9 pots as opposed to 6. I do not care that these conflict with each other. I just need to see at least 2 of the pots, and I feel like even if my hand was bad, they'll just make it better. People even will ash this card oftentimes. So I'm really liking Extravola. I will not cut it down at all. I'm going to keep it the same. My list is actually 43 cards. I gave the crossouts back. I have crossouts, but somebody's holding them for leverage for a deal I was making. But yeah, like my list is actually 43 cards, and I added extravs and took nothing out because I was literally adding consistency cards. I don't need to take anything out for it. Every time I draw a pot, you could say, oh, well, if you took the 3 pots out, it'd be 40 cards. But like, you have to think about it. Every time you draw that pot, it's the next 2 cards anyway. So it's like you're still playing a 40 card deck. You have to think about it like the upstart theory. So in theory, these 9 cards don't exist. So even though I play 43 cards, I'm actually playing 34. Technically, I'm playing 33 when you think about it. Because every time you see these, it's the next card in your deck. So I really like this a lot. It worked out well. I didn't break a single time today. And that's part of the reason why I just 2-0'd almost every matchup, even when I was going second, playing against really good engines, which were kind of annoying. But my deck's annoying too, so I can't complain. For the last of the starters, I'm playing 3 Rabina, and I'm also playing 3 copies of Eaglin. These are all of the important cards in your deck. Everything about your deck's tailored to getting access to these. If you resolve it once, you never really have to worry about playing around hand traps or anything like that. Like that's another thing that's the beauty of this deck. Like your opponent has to draw the right combination of hand traps. They get 1 chance, and they're opening 5. If they do not draw the right combination of hand traps, it literally doesn't matter what hand traps they draw after because you will always be able to play around them. You'll be chain blocking. Once your opponent if they don't draw Ogre first, like it doesn't matter if they Ogre map on the following turn because you already have Dreaming Town. You already have so many different plays. It doesn't matter if they top deck Ash or chain blocking it. It doesn't matter if they draw Impermanent or Chalice and have to like play into it on their turn because you will already have access to Advent to dodge it. So if your opponent can't stop your plays once, it's just pretty much like there's just no way to stop this deck once it gets going. It's too good. It steamrolls. It gets so much advantage. And if the deck's allowed to play, it feels like there's no deck that can really beat it except the Mirror. The Mirror is the only deck that would stand a chance with a full established board. You can still win the Mirror even with a bad hand and your opponent opening insane. It's one of the weirdest Mirrors I've ever played in my life. The last of the birds is going to be Toucan and Stree and also the Barrier Statue. I cut my some work package, not because it was bad, but because I thought Crossout was a lot better. Crossout covered grounds that my deck couldn't naturally cover, which was playing around Droll and playing around Lancia. The cool thing also with Crossout is I was sideboarding in 1 copy of Dark Ruler and 1 Twin Twister, sometimes even 1 Lightning Storm, so that if I went first, I could Crossout for blowout cards. If my opponent didn't Lancia or Droll me, because I'd sideboard those 2 for Crossout, but if not, sometimes people would stand by. Well, it doesn't happen a lot, but it happened a few times. People stand by Twin Twisters, and I'd cross out, calling the 1 Twin Twister that I cited in my deck, so that I don't auto lose, and they could just like attack over my Bear Statue and summon DP main phase 2, pop Impin, and just keep playing. You know, so I just felt like Crossout covered grounds that my deck literally couldn't cover, and now I cover all grounds. I can play around Dark Ruler, I can play around Twin. Lightning Storm doesn't really hurt that much, but I don't like being forced to use my reactive cards. I want to use my reactive plays when I choose to, you know, when there's a certain card that I want to respond to. Being forced can make it easier for your board to play into, because if your opponent has a Dark Ruler, the Lightning Storm will force everything out, and they can just Dark Ruler you and break your board. So I feel like the Crossout was way better than the Samort package. Like I said, it gave me more utility. It allowed me to beat Lancia and Droll even harder. And even in weird plays, you can cross out for one of your birds. And even though it's negated, you can actually still chain block, which is really cool. So like I'll go down to the ruling of like call by is a prime example. So like let's say I call by the grave, I don't know, Ash Blossom. I could still activate Ash Blossom. Its effects are just negated for that duration. Crossout is exactly like call by. You know, its effects are negated, so you could still chain block, which is really cool. Like you could literally just cross out a bird and chain block. But like the other applications are when you have engine that's not good enough, you can cross out for a bird and just like stall out. That bird that you cross out for, next turn you can add it back and you can actually make cross out like a pseudo gold sarcophagus, if that makes sense. So it's really, really cool, the applications that it has. I really like it a lot, but like I said, I borrowed my 3 because I'm still waiting to get mine back. I actually purchased a playset, and they should be in here. But anyways, 2 Impin, 1 Ryza, and 1 copy of Avion. I did not summon Avion at all today. Not that it's bad, but Ryza and Impin were just like always my go-tos. Impin absolutely overperformed, as well as Stree. Stree actually put in mad work. Stree was crazy. I don't even know how many times I used there. I think PK was the deck I used it against the most. I resolved Stree like 3 to 4 times against him in a grind. Because I sided out 2 birds, so I couldn't resolve Eaglin anymore. So I just started literally playing Stree control with Impin, looping Impin off of Toucan. It was nutty. Stree was just nasty, you guys. It was very, very good today. Stree's OP. But Ryza was not even as good as Impin today, no cap. Like, and Ryza's insane. Like, I've told you guys so many times, and I'll say it again, like, when you have unexplored winds set up, you can not only Ryza loop your shifter, but like you don't even have to wait a turn to loop your shifter or your Harpy's Featherstorm. Like you can Ryza stack it on your deck and then draw it the same turn off of your unexplored winds effect to draw. That's one of those plays where I will get greedy and add a lot of birds from my Banish Zone so I can put them back on the bottom of my deck and draw what Ryza put on the top. You don't cut your deck if you put cards to the bottom because you didn't look inside your deck, which is just insane. So Ryza's nuts. You could stack the cards and draw on the same turn. That's relevant to cards like Terraforming. It's relevant to cards like Call by the Grave. It's just really, really nutty what you can do with Ryza. Even under Mystic Mind, the card's just broken. He's just insane. Like, Ryza is so insane. When I set up, if I D-Shifter with Engine, that's what I was saying. Like, you literally win the duel. Because if your opponent can't play out a D-Shifter turn 1, they're never going to be able to play out it. Because you infinitely loop Shifter forever. Like, they can't play out of it. You can even loop your Harpy's Featherstorm. You literally put your opponent on infinite turn skips. Featherstorm, you've got Shifter, you've got Barrier Statue, you've got Impin, you've got all the control mechanics from your Little Bird's utility, cards like Ryza. The deck, it just has so many built-in win conditions. And Ryza lets you loop quite a few of your win conditions, including even like looping cards like Mine. If you like out your own Mine and you want to play a little bit but get Mine back, you can actually stack it on top of your deck and draw it off like unexplored wins and just go in again if you just need it to resolve a map. It's just insane. Like, especially looping Harpy's Featherstorm, like, the moment you activate that, sometimes people might not scoop because they're like, oh, I get a chance, you know, but, dude, like, you resolve Ryza, put it on top of your deck, it's just like, dude, you're getting Featherstormed every turn. Like, it's just insane. Honestly, it's just broken. It's too good. It's way too good. So those are my big birds. But Impin was the man. Impin put in the most work today. You guys will see in the videos that I upload, Impin was just cracked. The card was just so good today. It was just absolutely insane. The PK player that I played literally couldn't even play out of Impin. Like, his only chance was summon Breaksword D. I stopped that. I Book of Eclipse his whole field off of Dreaming Town, which was broken. Like, Dreaming Town's so good. And then I'm like, okay, well, he has to summon Zeus. But, like, he can't attack into Impin. He can't get Zeus. I'm like, yeah, there's no way he can't out it. He couldn't even access code. Because, like, access code couldn't even gain attack. It was just, this card's so broken. For my defensive cards, I played 3 Shifter. This is the best hand trap in the game. There's no better hand trap. I'm playing 2 Ash. Mainly for crossout, I just felt like Ash was just like a 2-0 for me. The other ones are all 1-ups because they're for niche scenarios. But I was like, yo, like, you know what? I definitely want to play the 2 Ash. Because Ash is one of those cards where, like, I can draw these and not be able to cross out for them and I wouldn't cry. But, like, if I can't cross out for Ash, like, it hurts. Because these are easier to play through than people ashing on certain points. Like, Ogre is okay against map if your hand's bad. Valor and Imperm are easier to play through, even without crossout. Your engine can beat those, but like Ash, I felt it was like a 2-0. If it's not being played in the hand traps for hand traps, it's playing them for crossout targets. They just have that dual function of being hand traps, and I did draw like 2 hand traps a little bit too often today. D-Fissure is the new tech. This wasn't in my list today, but I added it after today. I decided today moving forward, I'm gonna start main decking Fissure and Macrocosmos. It's just insane. Like, this deck can just manipulate everything. 1 unexplored wins, This is one of the best. Like almost every card in this deck is just broken, and it's just crazy because by themselves they're not that strong, but it's just the entire archetype put together. It just has so many good cards. We have one Dreaming Town card is freaking MVP. I Book of Eclipse like 4 different broken boards today. And then we have Call By. Call By is just here. Like I played the 1 Call By and I played 3 Crossout today. It's just here. It's another card that can hit Droll or Lancia. It covers grounds. It's really, really strong. So extra deck doesn't really matter, but I guess this card is the card that matters the most because you can't really out Towers as monsters. You can out Dragoon with Winds. You can out everything except cards that are unaffected, and this is your way to do it. So this is like the only card I would never banish off Prosperity if I don't know what I'm playing against. The rest was filler because I don't have the Tri-Brigade Link monsters. I was actually borrowing them for my last list, so I just threw in filler cards so I could have a 15 card extra deck to resolve all my pots. But these actually will come up certain scenarios. Since I've started playing this deck, I've never ever summoned for my extra deck, not even one time. But they're there for when they do come up. This is Merry Christmas. People actually want to do it. I've never Zeused anybody. I've never actually used my extra deck for anything except pots. The main deck's just that gas. But they're there because when they do come up, it's better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. But that's going to be it for my profile, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you. Make good choices. Don't hurt your brain cells. Stay tuned for future content. And I'm going to be uploading some Despia content for you guys soon. Peace.